Hey, young lady.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm fine. I saw you before I could see myself. Now I see both of us.
Listen, so I wanted to tell you, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to us. I've been super, super, super excited since you agreed to come on the show. So what I've decided to do is I want you to introduce everyone to you. For those of them that don't know who they are, because I've been having several conversations over the time that we've agreed to do the interview to introduce them to you. But I kind of want to handle this interview a little bit differently. What I want to do is I just kind of want to let you talk, and as questions come to my head, I won't cut you off, but I'll just save my questions and ask you as we go. Is that cool with you?
That's fine.
Okay. So tell everyone who you are.
My name is Addie Smith presently, but at
Hmm.
the time I was known as Addie Wade, being one of those frisky women at the young age and got married all those times. That name was Addie Wade, and I was
Okay.
known as Wade's old lady in the streets.
Hmm.
And all my life, I've been a tomboy for trying to outdo, because I had a brother who was older, and he was my inspiration to try to outdo his ass on everything that he did. So
Right.
that made me very vulnerable to anything with cars and boats. And now at 83, I'm still driving my motorhome, a 35-foot motorhome, and those kind of things. But in my life, it's been cars, vans, more cars, motorhomes now. I was a teacher for 20 years, and the kids couldn't deal with me because I said, motherfucker, sit down. So all those things made me somebody to be remembered, and that's how the Mad Addie came in, because they used to say, you know what? That B, Miss Smith, she crazy. So that's how come I got the name Mad Addie.
So tell us what made you eventually get into drag racing? What brought that about?
Well, when I was in high school, before I graduated, you know
Hmm.
how the dudes used to ride around school and try to pick up the girls after school.
Right.
Well, this guy named Morris Wade had a 57 Cadillac. And then in those days, that was a big thing. And so anyway, flirting and whatever, I got to be his girlfriend.
Okay.
So anyway, when I graduated, we were still going together, and his thing was race cars. And he had been in speed with cars and racing down the streets and doing all those things before I met him. But being a follower and with my personality,
Right.
I got encouraged and got hooked into the drags. And I found out I was pretty good at it.
Right.
So that's how I got started when I was 19 years old, straight out of high school. And we ended up getting married in June. I came out of school in January and I got married in June. And it was on then with the cars.
Right. So once it was on with the cars, tell us how you eventually, because I really want us to get into the stories of the, we want to know, I want to know about the people you've raised. How did it come about that you were like, okay, well, I'm going to get on the track? And how much opposition did you face when you wanted to get on the track and actually race these guys? Because think about this. As a woman, the threat of possibly being beat in a race by for a man, the threat of possibly being beat in a race by a woman, that sometimes they really can't fathom that. So just talk to us a little bit about how the decision was made to originally get on the track and what kind of opposition you faced with actually racing these guys.
Well, I think I was fortunate because with my husband, he was be on the track racing and racing. We had bought this 1956 Buick Century,
Hmm.
and from being stock, he always wanted to go faster because the guys on the street, he just loved to come out winning all the time. So he modified the car with an Escadarian cam. We just did minor modification, and we changed the cam in the car, and we changed the rear end to a 411. This gave us top end speed. anyway, he was doing good on the track, winning. So I said, shit, I want to do that too. So I got in the car, and I was very tomboy. I didn't wear no shoes when I raced, because when we first got the car, it was automatic. As I call it, it was a dynamo automatic shift. But you could handle it and do things to it, like pulling it down to third gear and coming up like a stick. But he didn't like that. But that's when we first started running. But we were winning even at that. And when you see Duckmaster doing those burnouts and everything, back then, the top fuelers and the more faster cars, they did the burnouts. All you did was stand on the line with a pro tree and hold your foot on the brake and rev the gas, standing still. And when the light turned green, bam, you took off. Right. But at that time, I was kind of, I don't know how you can describe it, but I was very forward as a female, and I didn't wear a bra. My hair was long, and I used to wear the hip huggers and shit. So white boys used to look at me, right? So this put a plus in my action, because for some reason I didn't have resistance with the racing, and they even let me drive their cars.
Oh, wow.
I'm serious. I was like a novelty thing on the track, and there was no other black girls and very few white girls. And I would get back-to-back races throughout the day. One day, I went so many times down the track, I actually ran out of gas going down on a run, because I didn't check the gas gauge, but I was in a thrill, bam, I was just knocking them out. Because after he changed the car to a stick shift, I didn't miss second. I was known not to miss second. And the guys saw this, and somebody would come and put a bet on them, and they would let me drive their car on the track. But I didn't have the resistance. And there wasn't too many black guys even out there running. And it was at Lyons drag strip right here in the edge of Long Beach and Dominguez Hill, which is in California. Yeah, but it was just a challenge as me, and on the streets, the same thing. They knew the car. They drive up, they see they're racing. If they raced the engine at me, it was on. And I just couldn't help it.
So you just had the speed bug. If they rev their engine, they were
asking, and I would comply. Yeah, but it was a trip, and I even now, and it's a couple of older guys that's still living that could attest to it, that live here in Compton, that knew me when I was doing that. And it's so funny because I ran into one guy, even in Home Depot. He said, I heard that you quit racing then because you didn't want to have no more babies. You told your husband you weren't going to get pregnant again to quit racing, so you left him. I said, no, nigga, that ain't the way that went.
So talk to us about some of the people that you've raced that we may be more familiar with.
Then in the modified stock where we were, there was not really known drag racers then. There was like Tim Woods. He had a 37 coupe, which is not in the class. Because see, you have a street car and you only modified slightly, you can't race other cars out of your class. And we were in the modified stock class. So there, in 1956, there was not too many people like what's going on with Dunk and his era, because black people wasn't in it and white people they all were kind of equal, so they weren't big time at all. But I have been on the track with ladies that's with the top fueler now, with Shirley Maldoni, and yesterday it was Richard Petty, who was on a TV commercial. They're old now and doing commercials and stuff, but I have followed them because I've been on the drag strip up until even after divorcing. And in the 70s, I would follow up to Sacramento because I had a male friend in my life who always liked that too, So it was like really just normal people like myself that we dealt with, me and my husband.
So you raced Richard Petty?
No, 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 no. I'm just telling you, those people were popular on the track when
Right.
I was out there.
Right.
And Don Gottlieb, those, they were in the top field, the long front end rail cars.
Right.
That's what they were racing. And a trucker friend of mine, his brother was the only black with a top fueler. We used to follow him. We went to Sacramento one time, and
Mm-hmm.
he actually won the top eliminator, and the prize was $5,000. It took us until 12 o'clock midnight before they would pay him because he was black.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And we had to come home. We were late getting back to LA to go to work and shit because we couldn't leave. They wouldn't pay him.
So
They would
did they eventually pay him?
Yeah, they did, but it was at 12 midnight. It was at 12
Right.
midnight when they gave up and paid it. His name was John Kimball. He's in the history, John Kimball. If you search black auto racers,
Mm-hmm.
black male auto racers, he was in the book. In fact, I found him online when I was searching. Yeah.
And all that just because he was black.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, we went up there in high style. We had a diesel. Peterbilt diesel tractor pulling his trailer with his car in it. We were doing just like the white boys, and they couldn't handle it. Yeah.
So so what years talk to us about the years that you raced. What years did you race?
From 1956 until a part of 1960. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I was 8 months pregnant in 1960, and I was still driving a 59 Corvette on the streets and with a 25-pound clutch, leaning back because my stomach was so big, racing dudes in the street. But I didn't race it on the track, but I was racing that one on the street.
So after
Yeah.
you had a baby, you gave up on racing.
Yeah, we got divorced when my son was 11 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was just me participating and going because I always knew somebody, and I would be able to get in the pit area where the cars was and everything out with the guys and stuff all the time because I always knew somebody I would be following somebody, that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been around them, yes. Yeah.
I was saying before you came on, I really hate like a lot of things, a lot of stories like this are not in the history books that really should be there. Place stories like and stories and like memorabilia like this should really be in like racing museums and things like that because we only have, as African Americans, we only have word of mouth to tell the story on a lot of
Right.
stuff that
Right.
happened back then. I
Right.
hate that like you really don't have, you have some pictures, you don't have a lot of pictures. All these things are just really just word of mouth for us. And this is like, unfortunately, not with just racing. It's a lot of things that happened back then that we really don't have proper documentation on.
Mm-hmm. But you see, the reason I don't have pictures for memorability is the husband at that time, and this is a serious conversation, when our son was born, today I have one picture of my son sitting on my sister-in-law's lap when he was about maybe a year old.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't believe in all that happy talking pictures and oh look at her. He didn't do none of that shit. You just did what you did, and for spending money on extra stuff like that, he didn't think it was necessary. And he didn't. And he worked 2 jobs and everything with money. It went to the car. We had a home, 3-bedroom home and all that. We would get in trouble with the mortgage and all that because if something came up bigger that would take the money, he'd put the money on the car stuff. So, and me being 19 and naive, hell, okay, I'm going along with it. I'm having fun, so it wasn't something really that he could afford the way he wanted to, but he made it work because that was what he wanted to do. And so, Go
You know,
ahead.
that's a lot of racers, a lot of races, even to this day. A lot of people are doing things with these cars, and they really, it costs a lot of money.
Yes,
It
and
costs a
back
lot
then,
back then, but it
hmm
costs a
a
lot
lot
now.
now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I know, because I being in at the small scale that we were, you know, sometimes I would be laying out on the under the car while he was trying to replace the clutch. He didn't blew the clutch during the race or something, and he was driving it to work. You know, that
it
same
was a
car.
street car.
Yeah, and then he would drive it to work. It had
Wow.
headers on it. You headers on it. You uncap it if you want to, when you get ready to go to track. Get the lope going, you know, be loud. But he drove it to work. But this
Wow.
headers, he could cap them if they were like straight pipes down the side, but they had a cap on. And when you go to the track, you would take the caps off to get that sound and the bass sound that you would get out of the car to race.
Mhm.
But we did really good. He had one of the pictures you could see it was about 3 or 4 trophies that we had won, but they were the little plastic trophies that were sitting on the table. And went my log of pictures there if you saw them.
Right.
But it was mostly you and your name on the streets because from the track it followed you.
Mhm.
You know, what you did, it followed you on the street. So it was more that a prestige thing that way because it was no accolades, it was no money like, you know, somebody betting on you and all this kind of stuff. It was nothing like that. But it
Mhm.
was just the fact you were able to do it and they thought you were doing something good because they know how much money it did cost then, you know. Everybody
Right.
black can do it. Yeah.
Do you regret not continuing the race after you left your ex-husband?
Mm, no, I'm like a switch reel, but I tell you what though, anytime I got into a car that was a stick, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I did that. Um, I had a little tracker, and there's no speed in a little tracker. It's like a little
Mhm.
SUV. Now, this is your phone? Yeah. And I towed this car. But anyway, my grandson, when he was about 10, I went and picked him up somewhere. I was partying, and I went and picked him up, and I was bringing him home to his mom. And it was a stick shift.
Mhm.
So I took off from the light, you know, and when I hit second, the back end said, it switched on it like it jumped up. He said,
Mhm.
Granny, I didn't know you could do that. I said, oh, nigga, you ain't seen nothing yet, you know, whatever. But I have a Jones for a stick shift car. And
Mhm.
right today, I would not own one. Because I'm at this age, I still get the urge to drive fast. You
Oh
know,
wow.
yeah. So I can't. I just
So
can't.
you so you just cannot own one of those cars because you know you're gonna drive fast.
I will. It's automatic. It's automatic. It's automatic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So since so when you left racing, you had your baby. Tell us about how you where your life went from that point.
Well, from that, I didn't explain to you when we were together um, about the engine of the car.
Okay.
I I learned how to, with his assistant, because he felt like I could do anything. He always did feel that way. But I would assist him in tearing the engine down when we had to replace the cam. And you have to, then we had a carburetor engine, the carburetor and then the manifold and then the heads come off. And you have to go right down, all the way down to the block where the crank is to take the cam to sit it on top and come back and put things together, pistons and rings, everything. So by this, having this knowledge, I knew how to take it loose. I think I could put it back together, but whether it was going to run right, I don't know that. But I would try. You know, I used to get greasy and everything, but that knowledge taught me a lot. And I have had the car and had the brakes act up on me. I've had to change the brakes on the car before I go pick him up from work. He knew I could do that, you know, those kind of things. And a lot of it has paid off, you know, now because I can tell you something going on from a sound or something with a car, but I can't fix it. But I can tell you where it's coming from and what it sounds like. And most times I'm correct, from the knowledge that from being the racing cars with him. And in the 70s, I was working at the YWCA in Pasadena, California. And this black lady ran this program I was working for, and she heard about me with the car thing. So she said, why don't you teach a class? The YWCA do classes and things for women. I said, well, what am I going to be doing? She said, well, just information on some women have never looked under the hood of a car. I said,
Right.
you're right. So I had the trucker boys, they had a Chevy engine. They painted it pink, and they brought it up to the YWCA and put it in the classroom that I was going to be in. And the newspapers wrote me up, the Sentinel wrote me up, the Monrovia paper, the Pasadena paper. We call it Nuts and Bolts. But the idea of the class was to make knowledge to the women, like this is the distributor cap, these are spark plug wires, this is the spark plugs, and this is the alternator, and this is your fans, and your cooling system runs this way through the engine to keep it cool. You get a spark that goes to the plugs when you turn your key from your distributor cap, and that's how your engine ignites and starts, and how to change oil. And the finale of the class was to show the women how they could change a flat. I had one black man sitting in the class, and he didn't believe that I could do what I said. So he did the whole 7 sessions of the class, and then I would go out to the parking lot, and he was still there. So I told the lady, okay, this is what you do. You leave the car on the ground, the tire on the ground. You get your lug wrench, and which is that T or X tool that you have in your trunk. I said, you place it on the lug, and you put pressure on it to loosen the bolts, and you loosen all of the bolts, the nuts rather. You loosen all the nuts. I said, and then you jack it up maybe about 1.5 inches or so off the ground, and then you take them all the way off. Then you could sit down on the ground or nail, and you inch the tire where it comes off the nuts, the lugs, and put it on the ground, and take your spare. If you have a spare, and I'll get this one fixed, then do the same thing, get it on there, wedge it on, being that low on the ground, then let it down, tighten up the lug nuts. There you go. The man said, I'll be damned. He says, okay. And he shook my hand.
So he doubted you at first, and then he thought that you
He
could
doubted
change.
me because I was too feminine looking for him. I didn't look like the girl,
Right.
So
So just
he
because
just,
you were feminine looking, he didn't think you would even be able to change the tire.
no. And he stayed the whole time. Each day he was there every day.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that happened in the 70s, and then from
Mm-hmm.
there, where have things gone? Talk to us about the progressing up, because like you said, once you got pregnant and had the baby, you stopped racing. So what has happened since then?
Well, not too much of nothing really, other than me changing boyfriends and getting me able to go different ways. I used to ride in a diesel. I tried driving a diesel truck. I liked that life. But then I had 2 babies. I got married a 3rd time and have a daughter, the one was talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that didn't last that was a hot mess. That was quick. That was really quick. And since then, I said, fuck it. I don't need no husband no more. And that's been, she was 11 months old when we broke up, her daddy and I never got married again. But in between, I've had a very interesting life. I've always been doing something. And as far as the cars, I went to the track, the Winter Nationals. I went to the Nationals in Indianapolis. And every year there's the Winter Nationals at Pomona Drag.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, but I used to race. I didn't bring that up. I used to race at 6 tracks in LA County. And that was from Saugus, which was the most northern Saugus, California, but Fontana, Riverside, Lyons, Santa Ana Drags, which other one? But it was 6 altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But I really actually ran on their track and won races there. just in running, period. But for the track and racing, from that point, I have gone to many races because they're a friend of ours that did race. The guy I told you about, John Kimball, with the Taufiler, and another guy, he's in the record with Floyd. His name is Flounoy, something like that. But his son took up his legacy, and he's still racing today.
Right.
But those I did actually know those people. And if you go to the early drags for black men racers, they are documented in history. Yeah. But most of the time it was just me and the guys liking to fuck with me, mess with me, and being able to go in the pits, and then, I love that life, hanging around, watching what they do and being a part of it, Yeah.
So it seems like you were like us girls are at the track now, way back in the day, except the difference is I learned talk to us about your reaction time. What was your reaction time on the tree?
You didn't beat me. I was a dunk. I was a dunk master.
Oh, you were?
You couldn't beat me out the hole. It was a pro tree light from the orange on down to the green light to go, right? You could not beat me out. You could not beat me out of the hole. That's all I got to say. As a female, I was a badass. And my best time in a quarter of a mile, I did 100 miles an hour in 13 seconds. That was my best time. Yeah. Yeah.
That was fast back then.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. That's why they used to question my husband about, they said he had done more to the car than he said he had done. Because they just didn't believe this four-door Buick doing this shit. They just couldn't believe it. But we kept it whatever it was. I don't even know what it was. All I knew is that we did change the cam and we changed the rear end. Other than that, because he didn't bore out and change the pistons. He didn't do